Welcome to Art Happy with Katie. Today we're going to make a pinch pot. Uh, so what you want to do is start with a lump of air dry clay. It comes in different colors. I'm using gray. After it dries, you can paint it with acrylic paints and spray it with shiny spray, or just leave it more of a matte finish. I also have a surface to work on. I'm using a cutting board. Sometimes I use the lid of a bin, or if you have any styrofoam to-go containers, I'll use the top of that. And let's get started. Okay, here's how I make my pinch pot. First thing I do when I get my piece of clay is I do something called wedging. And wedging is just smacking the clay. I'm using a cutting board as my surface. And when I wedge, I am not flattening it out into a giant pancake, because for what I'm making today, I'm making a pinch pot. I want it to start into a little cube. And so what I do is I slam it, but I'm doing it in a controlled way. I do all the different sides, and that helps make sure there's no tiny air bubbles in there. Now, if you're using air dry clay, this is less important than if you're using clay that's going to be fired in a kiln, but it's still good practice. So what I'm doing is I'm just trying to get it into a tightly compressed little cube, and then I'm going to turn it into a ball. So if you're wedging can get it more ball shape, that's easier. I don't want any tiny bits of air hidden in there. After I get it wedged, I've done it probably 3 or 4 times on each side. I'm using my hands to just kind of pat out the edges so I can get it into a ball shape. I've got a little wrinkle there. I'm going to do one more wedge. Make sure that wrinkle gets out. If you want to roll your ball, you can. It's kind of relaxing. I like wedging. Now, I have a good ball, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick my thumb in the middle of the ball, and that's going to be the middle of my pinch pot. Now when I do it, I'm going to do it here because there's a wrinkle there. I'm going to do it, I've got my other hand holding it strong, and I'm going to stick my thumb in there. Now it almost looks like a donut. Now this is kind of like riding a bike in that it takes a while to get the feel for clay. I have stuck my finger all the way through a million times, but now I'm kind of used to it, and I can kind of tell how far I'm going. You can start to feel, if you can feel your finger on the other side, you've definitely gone far enough. And it's better to go not too far than stick your finger all the way through. Now, I already have a little pot. I can put something in there. But ideally on clay, you want the sides of the clay to be about 1/4 of an inch and no more than 1/2 an inch. So this is almost an inch. So that's too fat. So we can do better. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pinch it, going around, just trying to pinch a little bit at a time. And I want to think about if I want a tall-sided dish, if I want a skinny dish like a vase, or one like this. This is kind of a low-sided, a little dish. I might put some things in there. I might put rings or change. This one's real low and long. This is a soap dish, and I added some feet on the bottom, and I put some holes so my soap water can drip out. So you can decide what size you want it to be. Now, when you first start, sometimes you don't decide as much as what happens is what you go with. But I'm using this hand, my right hand to kind of keep it strong, and I'm using my left hand to pinch. Now, that looks pretty good. I've got some little cracks up here, and what I'm going to do is use this other hand to keep it strong, and I smooth out my cracks. The difference in a good looking pinch pot and one that doesn't look that great is just spending a little extra time smoothing out the cracks. Okay, now I could take my pinch pot. If I wanted to make it wider, I can kind of pinch it and slowly bend it out. I can make it into a little, like a little cup or a little bowl. But if I go, after I do some pinches and get it, now it's a lot wider, I'll start to see where I've gone a little fast. I have a few cracks. So I'll stop and just keep this hand to keep it strong and use this hand to press out those cracks. Get a nice, firm, smooth lip. You don't want the lip, which is the edge, to get too thin, or it won't look very good. And then when you reach in to get your change, you'll go, ah! So you can just pinch that out. Now, if I want it to be a little more roundish, I can press out. I'm pressing out a little round the bottom here. And bring the top back in. Then I'm going to smooth out all my cracks. And that takes some time, but it's pretty relaxing, I think, and rewarding. Because a very few times you can just smooth something with your thumb and it looks amazing. I have some water with me. I always have a little bit of water when I'm doing clay, but I very rarely use it. If it takes you a long time to make your pot and it gets very dry, then you could add a tiny bit of water. And all I do is stick my finger in the water, kind of shake it off, and I could add a little bit there. But I really don't recommend it unless it gets super cracky, because sometimes the water will form a little thing called slip, where it's kind of clay water, and it looks like it's smooth, but then when it dries, there'll be a bunch of cracks underneath. So there you go. You can do that. Whenever you finish your clay piece, you want to make sure you remember to put your name or your initials on the bottom. So I'm going to write Katie. And maybe a little happy face there. And there you go. There's our first pinch pot. Thanks for watching Art Happy with Katie. Subscribe and we'll see you next time.